mute at that point. So thank you for everyone who's here. Because this is being recorded, we're going to have this available hopefully on YouTube. It usually takes me a few days to get it posted there, but it is being recorded so that if people come in late, that they can get access. And if people aren't able to make it to this meeting, that they'll be able to see it. So I'm gonna get us started. Can everyone see? Anyone having issues seeing the screen? Doesn't look like it. Okay, here we go. All right, so today we're going to go through the general plan that the Rodent Remediation Committee came up with. We have sort of simple and then we have more complicated. So what we are doing is we're going to distribute some pamphlets with information that we both go over here, but also that we're going to find out along the way so that people who are renters, people who are not on the listserv are able to see what the issues are and what the neighborhood is planning to do. The next step was we wanted to hold this Zoom meeting that we're having right now to go over action plan items that we need neighbors to buy into. So that's composting, a neighborhood exterminator, improving the bins that people do have, a letter writing campaign, and also improved reporting to 311. We're also going to have, we're going to be talking about continued communication with the city in regards to trash pickup. They're doing baitings of sewers. And then we also have a plan to ask mayoral candidates about the rodent problem at debates. I'm waiting to hear. I know that I believe Steve Fox is working on setting up a mayoral candidate debate. I haven't gotten a date for that yet, but we will share that information if we get it. We definitely want to put those questions out there. So the main problem areas that we have found in talking to the city, the neighbors, and talking to exterminators, their main problem areas are wet space, access to food, and cover. So one simple solution for anyone who has drain pipes is just to make sure that they're hooked up to the underground pipes so that we don't have water gathering anywhere, because rodents really like that. In terms of food, a lot of people have trash barrels, but we've noticed they don't have tops. That is something that we really want to make sure people are doing, is if you have a trash barrel, make sure that you can seal it. If you don't have a trash barrel, the suggestion is using heavy duty trash bags, so not the white thin ones that a lot of us use, or using a collapsible trash bag, which I will explain later. We've also had reports of people using squirrel feeders, maybe distributing peanuts, or using bird feeders. And the feedback we've been given from multiple sources is that this is a problem. It is supplying food to the rats, and we need to get rid of them in order to cut down on the amount of rats that we have here. We also are looking into composting, which will be the next topic that we cover after this. And then another big issue, which a lot of people have been reporting, is that those plastic baggies of typically dog poop, animal feces, are left on top of trash bins or on the ground around trash bins, or just left on the sidewalk. And rats really like that. So that's something that we need to continue to work on in the neighborhood. And then the other main problem area is that rats really like cover. So the lovely ivy that we have, if it's on the ground, the suggestion is that it gets cleared up, which I know is a tough thing to hear, but that's just the suggestion that we've been given from both the city and also exterminators. And then as we're entering the fall, really cleaning up backyards, making sure that leaves are gotten out of the way, because rats really enjoy sitting under them. So the first action is the committee is suggesting that we as a neighborhood bring composting in. So in terms of how it works, we're not going to go through this whole slide. I'm not going to read everything off of it, but you can compost so many different things. And we've been working with Black Earth Compost, who will be joining us in a little bit. And they have not only just the general composting of meat, dairy, but also they can do things like paper towel tubes and cooking oil and grease. But they will also do special pickups of textiles, yard waste. If you have a big event, they'll do sort of an extra pickup on your day of pickup, but they'll pick up more. So that was a really positive thing we found about them. They do curbside pickup once a week, and there's 2 different kits that you can start with. I'm going to show you a photo of them. So you can see they're comparing it to a mug for scale, but the reason we like these kits is because they have tops that seal. If you look at the 13-gallon container, it clicks in On the right side, there's an orange connector that clicks in that is pretty amazing. It is really hard to open, so it is very much rat proof. So this is something that you could choose which kit you wanted, and then you'd also have a bin in your own home to collect the compost. So these containers are what will be put out on the curb for pickup. These are the fees that are associated with composting. It is not something that is currently offered by the city. It is an extra cost, and we are very well aware of that. And so what we like about this company is that if we are able to get a certain amount of households to sign up, there's a 50% off discount for the first invoice, just for the service. But also, if you look here at the density discount, that's something that's really interesting to us because it would reduce the cost over a longer amount of time. So that is why we're bringing it to the whole community. And we have other sort of group discounts for other services, but this is one of the big ones and the exciting ones that we found. I think Connor, who's on later, maybe will be able to tell us if there's a new number, but I think there are already 18 people either signed up or pre-registered in the South End. So to sign up, I will be sending this out in an email, and I will be sharing a slideshow as well. It's really easy to sign up. And what you can do is mention that you heard about Black Earth through the UPNA, or that sort of referred through the UPNA, so that they know that they're part of this group. So that, just going back here, if we can get the 10+ sign up discount for the first service. So I'm now going to, read the benefits. The other benefit, which we want to make sure that everyone knows, is not just about rodents. If we want to, we can ask that we get soil for the park, which would reduce the need for chemical fertilizers. And then, of course, there's a huge environmental benefit. Any food waste that goes into landfills can become greenhouse gases, but if you're composting, it is not as big of an issue. So there is an environmental benefit as well. So now I'm gonna get out of this. Connor Miller is on from Black Earth. I sort of went through everything really quickly because he's more of the expert. He can answer questions, but I want everyone to know that he's joining us very last minute. So thank you so much, Connor, for doing that.
No worries. Yeah, I don't have anything planned to say,
That is
but
fine.
looks like you got all the numbers right, except it's 25 people in the South End now, so getting closer.
Awesome. Okay, I think I see the first question. Is it Joy? I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hey, Joey, it's Kim. We couldn't hear you.
I'm hitting ask to unmute. I don't know if there's anything else I can do.
Okay.
Oh, here.
There we go.
Perfect. You got it, Joey.
Well, first of all, and then I have a question to address to Connor. I want to thank everybody for putting this together. And it looks like, as someone new to UNFPA's neighborhood, or the Union Park Neighborhood Association, I have only recently been getting emails and learned about this meeting from my neighbor, Kim Borchardt, who I see on here as well. I wanted the city to know, or all of you to know, that I met this morning with Christopher McNally. Perhaps he has spoken to the Union Park Neighborhood Association in the past, but he's the environmental health inspector, or one of them, for the city of Boston. We spent about an hour and a half talking this morning, and my question for Connor, because one of the things I noticed in walking around my section of the neighborhood, which kind of incorporates Tremont Street between West Dedham and Upton, Ivanhoe, which is an alley behind the buildings that front Tremont, and Draper Lane. I think all of my neighbors know what I'm talking about. We noticed that people who do use barrels we found that 3/4 of the barrels that we saw are chewed through. They either have big holes chewed through on the lids, so even if you close a lid, the rats are able to chew through these, either from the bottom up or from the top. And I wondered what material your composting barrels were made of. Are they rat proof in terms of that? I mean, if you're putting composted food out.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of some barrels been chewed through. That seems like a very high rate, which is weird.
It was quite
Um,
remarkable.
Can I
But,
ask for clarification? You're talking about a trash barrel that's been chewed
We're
through?
talking about
just
the
wanna
big
clarify.
bin trash barrels with the lids that flip. And 3/4 of the ones we saw on Draper Lane.
of
were
our
chewed
green
through.
composting bins were chewed through?
No, these aren't composting
trash.
bins. So my
Okay.
question is the material that you use for
I
your
mean,
composting?
it's recycled plastic. I don't
Mhm.
know how that's different from the trash, but
Yeah,
from what we've seen, it's, the lids, it's usually squirrels, not rats that are on the lids. And I've heard cayenne pepper helps that, but
okay. I mean, I love the idea of composting. I mean, you know, we all know that food is going in just the garbage bags that are laid out at 5 o'clock in the evening for, you know, an all-night buffet for the rats in our neighborhood. And so the idea of removing the foodstuffs
yeah,
from
these
those
bins are
plastic
more
bins,
secure
I
than
think it's
trash bins.
yeah, absolutely.
Joey, I'm gonna jump in. I actually personally watched a giant raccoon try to get into the larger bin.
Mhm.
And they were throwing, this is the green compost 13 gallons, is that the bigger one? And they were throwing the bin, they were knocking the bin. This was a giant raccoon. They could not get into it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I wish you got a video.
Okay.
We have a video of one raccoon dragging it into the forest and then giving up.
I think what Joey's talking about, and I've observed too with the Pine Street trash bins, they're really heavy duty, you know, plastic bins, and they have been chewed through by rats. And I think just about anything, unless you put steel out there, is going to really get chewed through. And it just needs to be something that's managed. When that happens, they have to be replaced, right? But hopefully
Right.
it takes a fair amount of time for those rats to really get through that 1/8-inch thick plastic, you know.
Yeah, and another thing with our bins is the lids are replaceable. So it's like a few bucks to just swap out lids.
Okay.
I had
I'll
that
back
problem.
off, but just sort of in this vein, knowing that rats will gnaw through pretty much anything, is there a reason that our trash and perhaps composting in the future is out in the streets after 5 o'clock at night?
I think what I'm gonna do is have us table that.
Okay.
Because I want to make sure that we focus on the compost piece right now. So if we
Okay.
can table that for now. And then we will, please feel free to bring it up again later and I will try to remember. Is that okay? Yes, okay. The next question, I know Beverly, you're next after this, but Kim had asked, are any restaurants or big buildings in the South End signed up, Connor, to your knowledge?
There's the Tishman Speyer. Is that South End?
I don't think
Okay.
so.
I don't know about that then. I mean, I'd have to look. Let me see.
Thank you. And Beverly, do you want to start your question and we'll see if we can do that as well.
Just on the, Mike, that was my question on the restaurants or big buildings. I think as we all really care about our city broadly and our neighborhood, making sure that we have sort of citizens and individuals, but also really trying to figure out a solution for whatever the big sort of buildings are, hospitals, restaurants, et cetera, because my guess is on a percentage basis, if the main problem is food, the percentage of food that, you know, even the Union Park Neighborhood Association creates in the South End versus everything else that then spills over, my guess is a very small percentage. And so I love the idea of composting for all the reasons you described. I have a little bit of a food inside everyone's home for a week question, but I like the broad idea, but I'm just not sure that it actually really gets to the heart of the problem if we're not tackling the biggest kind of sources of the problem.
Well, so what's the difference between putting it in a compost bin versus trash can?
Well, our trash comes twice a week right now.
Okay, because commercial pickups go twice to 7 times a week.
Okay,
So any
that's
large
your question.
food
I'm
producer-
just saying, us personally, you know, we I don't know how, you know, we live in a building and in a condo in the city, and there's not a lot of room, and so now we're going to have a 13-gallon can in our condo. If people are trying to compost, then there's more food inside. Again, it's just all these, I think, second and third order implications on the once a week. But again, to my first question, which was, what about the biggest sources? I don't know what those are. Maybe everyone or folks on this or the city knows what those biggest sources are, and maybe it is all of us individuals. I somehow would doubt it, but I think it's worth asking the question, probably less to you, Connor, and more to Union Park Neighborhood Association and or the other. I don't know if there's anyone from the city's on or something, but this can't be a problem that we just solve as individual people who happen to be part of the Union Park Neighborhood Association.
So I'll jump on that. So again, the goal is, because a lot of the interventions that the city is doing, and the city has been reactive, we'll get to the city later in the presentation. The city has been working with us, but I think we've realized that we also need to take actions. That's the goal today of what the neighborhood can do. We are in touch with restaurants. We have made some strides in restaurants improving their trash disposal and cleanliness, and ISD has been looking into that as well and following up. We have not approached them yet about composting, but that's definitely something that we can do. So thank you for bringing that up. Beverly, I think you were next.
Thank you. So first, let me just say thank you so much, Abigail, and to the committee who did the research for this. And I really appreciate your community service. And we all do. And let me, so I have a few points to make. And I just wrote them down so that I would kind of stay on track and not take up a lot of time. So the idea of composting is great in theory, but we live in a neighborhood where people have difficulty recycling things properly. Not only our trash is only picked up twice a week. I mean, I want to reiterate what Kim just said. I'm not going to have a 16-gallon barrel in my kitchen with rotting food in it all week long. I'm in, my apartment just isn't big enough. And then carrying it out, I have arthritis. I can't carry a heavy bin, a 5-gallon bin at all. So those are some real issues with composting. It's a great idea, but I think that to get everybody on board, which would be the goal, would be a real challenge. Many apartments anyway have disposals. I use a disposal to get rid of food waste that I can't put in the trash. But the real issue, certainly for us on Upton Street and in the back, are the restaurant who, there are big piles of sewage around the sewer hole, stagnant water that sits there all week long. The restaurants are guilty of a lot of providing a lot of food for these rodents. So, and I want to tell you what this impact has been on my building in particular. We've had 2 cars, electrical wiring severely damaged at $800 a pop, because the rats are so big they can get under an SUV and eat the insulation for the wiring, because the insulation in the past few years, they stopped using fiberglass. They use a soy-based product that to the rats tastes like vanilla. So we can't park cars in the back anymore because the rats eat the insulation. They get up into the car, they eat the insulation. So our building alone has spent $3,000 paving every square inch of our backyard that had any dirt or plant or tree in it. And the rats found their way up into the wooden fence. We have a 1/2-inch wooden fence. They ate through the wooden fence. So on the news today, Jim Browdy was talking about, on the radio, a tool that New York City is now using called ContraPest. It is a pest control without poison that has been approved by the US Environmental Protection Agency. It is apparently some kind of food that you feed rats and causes rat females to go into early menopause, thereby reducing the number of babies that the rats produce. rats can produce up to 15,000 pups a year. So reducing the rat's ability to have babies would be we'll never get rid of them. But there are so many, and that's the real issue. There are so many of them, and they're causing all this damage to our property and to our health. So I would like to put in a really intense vote for our neighborhood association to pay for a community rat exterminator to come around, use these kinds of tools to mitigate the rat populations in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to ask, just because we have people set up to answer questions, that this is not, I know we shared about the cars and everything before. I want to make sure that we're focusing on when we have the people here to answer questions. So we'll definitely have more time later for people to give information and ask questions. But I think for now, I want to make sure that we respect the time of the people who are here. So later, we'll definitely have time for that. And I think if anyone has any specific questions about how the composting works, really what this is for is we want to share as much information as we can that we have worked to gather. We know that not everyone's going to jump in on composting, and that, some people, that's why we found, that there's 4-gallon apartment kits, not just the big gallon. So we want to give people as much information as we can to enact change. So I want to make sure that we get through all the information. So since we have Connor here and he has given up his time this evening, does anyone else have any more specific questions for him about how Black Earth works, how their composting works? He did share, I've lost the chat. Where did I put it? There's no commercial pickup in the South End right now for Black Earth. So he did share that in the chat for everyone. Kristen, you have a question?
It's not necessarily a question, but more of a comment. And I think part of it, and Connor, if you have materials around this, I think it's education around composting, because I think that that's something we can probably share with our constituency. I think that I had to be educated on certain things, the types of containers that you can keep in your home that might not be the full gallon container, but it can be a countertop container. And that they actually really do eliminate the smell. It's amazing. So different things of that nature, if you have data that we can use to share with people, because I had to be educated about it. At first, I was like, I don't want that in my house either, right?
We have a good video on our website that kind of shows the full cycle, how everything works in 3 minutes. But yeah, it's really convenient now. Things don't smell. You can curbside compost way more than you can put down the sink. Like, you're not going to be grinding chicken bones and stuff like that, and you end up making soil instead of more sewage problems. So
and I think the reality is there's going to be people who are going to be on board with it, people who might be a little more skeptical of it, and the people in between. And I think what we need to be able to do is get as many people on board who are interested in this, given the fact that you have this service. But then I think it's to us to try to help educate. So if there's that information on your website, I think that'll be helpful. And I think we'll just need to push that along a little bit too.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I would just say is it's not really a fringe thing anymore. The city is making it more and more important. They're going to come out with, a couple preferred vendor thing in the next month or so. But the towns, the states are starting to require it. It is required of all residents in Vermont to compost. The state is running out of capacity to handle waste. And at some point, it's going to have to be dealt with because it's a big problem coming in the next 10 years.
And I'll second that. I'm actually here from Vermont, so we have to recycle up here when we're in Vermont, but compost. Or compost while we're up here. But it excludes any kind of meat products, bones, and things like that. And the question that I have for you, Connor, is how do you deal with the meat products and things like that? And why?
All that breaks down fine. It's not good for your backyard pile where you would attract rats. Mm-hmm. But curbside programs, our piles are 15 feet high, 20 feet wide, and 160 degrees for a few months. So put anything in your oven at 160 for a few months, and it's there's not much left.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess while I'm at it, just a quick question. Do people tend to sign up for you on a building basis or on an individual apartment basis with the smaller containers versus a larger container for the building?
I'd say the buildings is probably one of the trickier areas to manage, and it's a mix of both. Like we do the Clarendon condos where it's on the building level, but I think that's in the south end. But most are still by the house now. I mean, we really started in the suburbs where it was by the houses, so it's a new process in the city.
And that would be good to understand at a city level because, if the containers are just going out for a couple of hours on pickup day, that's one thing. But if they sit permanently outside the building,
I think ideally the building organizes it and we just pick up one bin with 20 households in it instead of 15 bins.
And Abigail, that'd be something that we probably want to give, some guidance to the neighborhood in terms of what's the best way to organize that, relative to our friends, our little furry friends.
And I think some of that will very much depend on the type of building everybody has as well. Different buildings are more conducive to being able to have collective areas where others are not, unfortunately.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you, everyone. Do we have any more questions for Connor before we let him go? Yep, Kenneth.
You're on mute still, Kenneth.
How is that? Is
Thank
it better? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Connor, when you were starting this effort, I bet you did more research into the quality of compost bins than most of us do when we go to Home Depot to buy a trash bin for our backyard. I don't know whether or not there's anything special about the use of those barrels as compost rather than an improvement in what those of us would use for regular trash. But I really do. I was with Joey this morning with the inspector and we saw lots of holes and lots of lids. And the idea that the bin that you're recommending has a lid that's attached but detachable and therefore replaceable probably makes it superior to a lot of what we're using. I wonder if we could take advantage of your research and help point the whole neighborhood to the quality. Whether
They might be.
can't quite the answer you were looking for, but your research intrigues me.
They might, I don't know if they're too small for trash, but their Orbis is the company, but we basically took the DEP standard one. So the DEP picked this bin because it's made out of recycled
They did.
plastic.
Okay. Maybe there would be a way for us as a community to endorse a certain kind of bins or maybe support them in some way or sell them through the membership or something like that to make sure that the bins were a little bit better than the ones Joey and I saw this morning. You could kind of hear the rats laughing as they were going through them. No, I made that part up. But
No, but they probably were.
they probably. Okay.
Thank you, Kenneth. Any final questions for Connor? I don't think I see anyone. Okay, Connor,
Okay.
thank you again. Thank you so much for jumping on last minute.
Thank you. Have a good one.
We really appreciate it. If anyone comes up with questions later, just shoot me an email and I can forward it on.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So again, after this meeting, we'll be following up with resources and things like that. This is all just education, introductory information. And I'm going to move back to sharing my screen and let Bob take over with all the research he did. Just give me 1 second. Bob, just tell me when I need to move on to the next slide.
Okay, we'll do.
1 second. And
Okay. Can you guys hear me okay?
yes, I can.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Okay. So what we were just talking about is really eliminating one of the potential food sources for the rats. And I think probably one of the fundamental things we need to do is reduce the population of the rats in the neighborhood as well. So, or as a primary kind of function. And what I did was found that there were several people in the neighborhood that were using ultra safe pest control, and they have a good rating, a good reputation in the Boston area. So I had one of their senior people, actually their field manager, come in on a garbage day so that he could see the full activity of what was going on, in the garbage piles, as well as, how much garbage is accumulated in each of the dumpsters and in, I'll call them kind of collection areas that have happened de facto. And basically, he did a very detailed assessment on a property by property basis. And I'll show you some of the results that came from that. But they're very helpful in terms of being willing to do a whole area assessment as opposed to a property by property assessment, and also looking at giving us volume discounts for a neighborhood-wide approach to this. So to answer the question, well, why? How is this any different than people just hiring an exterminator today, or somebody? There are several properties where people are putting out their own retail purchased bait trap and putting bait in those traps. The real difference is that it's a neighborhood approach, so that today, if a handful of people have an exterminator contract, and they put out bait traps, they get rid of a certain amount of rats, snap traps, same kind of thing. But the rats are going to eventually kind of learn, hey, that's not a friendly place to go, and I'll move 20 feet over to the next house. So one of the approaches that we thought was going to be much more effective is do this on a full area basis. So find out where the rats are spending most of their time, find out what their food sources are, find out where their home sites are, and then treat it as a whole area as opposed to spot treatments. So what they had come up with in their reports is identifying major food source areas. Vegigantes is one, and that is a major issue, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Villa Victoria dumpsters has been a major issue, and it's less of an issue, and I'll talk a little bit about how that's improved. And then probably one of our major areas of issues is overnight garbage bags, as well as these large collection piles from different sources. So if you look at this, we have Vegigantes that's doing daily cleanup of their kitchens and using solvents to kind of wash out the grease on the kitchen floors, and that comes down out into the alleyway, down into the storm drains, and then the storm drains take that grease water and move it around throughout the back of the area that we're looking at. So it's actually attracting the rats, not just in the back of the restaurant itself, but it's attracting the rats wherever that storm drain water goes. Just from a high level, from a price point of view, because we're looking at targeting 19 properties that are associated with the area where this evaluation was done, combination of Draper Lane and Ivanhoe Street, where this was done, that there's significant discounting that's associated with it. And go ahead to the next slide, please. So, and here's a map of where the evaluation is done, has been done. And if you look at the small red dots, those are areas on Draper Lane and Ivanhoe, basically the Upton Street buildings and Tremont Street buildings that are adjacent to these alleyways. And those red dots are where the exterminator found physical evidence of rat damage or rat paths, burrows, et cetera. So you can see, a fair amount of activity there. Then in the larger dots, these are areas where there are significant